What is going on out there, peeps? Has anybody heard any news about the dinar lately? Yes, you guys, I saw the news. Okay, so I try to explain it to people in different chats. So I said, let me go do what I need to do. Let's make a video about this so we can go over what's going on and why you should not panic. Okay, you guys, if you're thinking about buying precious metals, give our friends over there at Money Metals Exchange a consideration. The link is down in the description. If you are a first-time buyer here in the United States or over there in Puerto Rico, and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you'll get a free half ounce of silver. For the return buyers, all the way up through the end of the month, if you spend more than $200, use promo code PEEPS, and they will give you $10 back. It's just their way of saying thank you to my subscribers, and I surely do appreciate that they do that. You guys know I got Facebook. Come join me over here. We got our own group, Pimpy's Investment Chat, so you can come over and post any kind of questions you want about cryptocurrencies, Iraqi Dinars, Vietnam Dong, the whole 9 yards over here. Gold, silver. There's a lot of very knowledgeable people in here. If I can't get to you myself, that will respond to your post. Just be respectful of one another. You guys I like the fact that this has grown pretty quick, but you guys know I have a second YouTube channel. Over here, I got to post stuff that I can't post on the other channel. You can see I've done a couple of videos that took off pretty good, but you know, especially on the Sarah Jacera. So I encourage you guys to join both groups just for the time until my website's up. Then you won't have to go through all these loopholes, you know what I mean? Anyways, you guys know that we're over here on, this is LBRY, LBRY. It is just like YouTube, except for they don't censor anybody. I mean, we could post all of our YouTube's, all of our videos over here, and you guys can come and watch them, and I encourage you to do so as well. All right, so what's going on over here in Iraq? Look, there's no sense in going through all of the news. We know what is going on, and that is that the rate change, they're announcing the rate change, okay, has increased, okay? So before we get into that, you can see there's a lot of articles about it, even in our own. It says Iraq Central Bank devalues the dinar by 22% amid public anger. Yeah, of course, because this affects the poor. Okay, but we're going to cover all that. They announced they were going to do this. Here's the thing that gets me. So, in the statement, it said the central bank set the new rate for the dinar, which is pegged to the US dollar, at 1,450 IQDs. When selling to the Iraq finance minister, which is pretty interesting because if you go over here, you can see the rate change has not officially that I can see changed for us. So this looks like a rate change internal. So until we see it over here, let's just assume that it is. Again, we want to see what they do, not what they say. So anyways, let's get into how this affects everything, okay? Because people are asking. I will leave the link for this. Shout out to Rice for shooting this over to me. Okay, so look at this guy actually kind of lays that out a little bit, and we're going to talk about this. It said, advisor to Al-Qademi. This is how the increase in a dollar's exchange rate will affect low-income people. So usually what happens when rate changes happen, most of the time you won't really notice it in the country. You know what I mean? In country. Not until you start seeing the price of goods go up. That's when you start to notice it. Like I said before, when a rate change happens, most people are not even usually aware of it. But let's say if I'm spending $1 for a gallon of milk, then, you know, one day I go to buy a gallon of milk and I notice it's now $1.50. You know what I mean? In other words, my dollar is so devalued that now my purchasing power has decreased. So cost of goods, cost of things that I need have now gone up. So it takes more of my money to buy the things that I need. Does that make sense? Now, people who benefit are people who have wealth outside of the country. Let's say I have, you know, like, well, this can even be in country. Gold, silver, of course, in country. You know what I mean? Let's say you got investments outside of the country. So whenever you sell that asset and you would exchange that asset for your own currency that's been devalued, that means you get more of those dollars because the value has gone down. Does that make sense? So let's say I have a painting that I know is worth $1 million. Even when the currency devalues, I know it's worth 1 million US dollars. It hasn't changed, even though my dinars have gone down in value. If I sell my painting for $1 million US dollars and then exchange it for the Iraqi dinar dollars, I get more of my Iraqi dinar dollars because the value has gone down. So it's good for me. I get more of my dinar money. It's just a really oversimplified version of this. Now, here's what's going on. We know that Iraq needs a lot of outside investors to come into Iraq and start opening up businesses there and start hiring people and to start rebuilding Iraq. We know this. They rely too much on oil. And I felt like I jinxed it because before the big drop in oil and the Rona and the whole 9 yards, I kept saying that, look, they can't just keep relying on oil. It's like 95% of their budget. I said, if something should happen, God forbid, some major event and the value of the oil goes down, it would really screw over Iraq. Ta-da! Just like on cue, we saw what happened. The Rona came, there was an oil war, it was terrible, and the price of oil went down. Now keep in mind, when they sell the oil, they get petrodollars. That's US dollars. Yeah. So I'm going to explain why that's big here in a minute. So here's what's going on. They're devaluing their dollars. They want international countries outside Iraq to start investing into Iraq. So if they devalue the currency, and let's say I have a company in the United States and I make Pimpy shoes, all right? Now, let's say my Pimpy shoes cost $10 to make in the United States. But if I go to Iraq, instead of it costing me $10 like it does in the United States, it only costs me 50 cents in Iraq to make my shoes. This is good because if I think about how much money I have in US dollars and I open up a factory over there in Iraq, that means my cost to create the Pimpy shoes is much, much lower. Then when I ship them back to myself from Iraq into the United States, I still sell them at the high price. My profit margins are much bigger. This is why Nike does this. This is why a lot of these companies go into other countries like China. The cost to make the items are cheaper because the exchange rate is low. They devalued their currencies. Okay, so with Iraq lowering the values of the dinar, and you can now buy more Iraqi dinar with your currency from another country, this is going to, in my opinion, entice a lot of countries, a lot of companies to start wanting to open up businesses in Iraq. You're going to see a flood of them. Now, again, I think it's only like 20% decrease, but that's kind of big if you're making products, okay? So that means if I send the supplies to my company in Iraq, then produce them there, whatever product I'm making, and then ship them back to myself, you know, the labor is really cheap because of the devalued currency. Okay, now this would be good for Iraq in the sense if they had some things to really export to other countries, but right now they don't. So that's why this is kind of shocking to me a little bit that they actually went down this path, because this will affect the poor. Now, what they can do to balance what they just did as far as decreasing in value of the currency to help the poor is then they need to increase the amount the poor get by the same percentage in which they just devalue the currency. So in other words, if they devalue the currency by 22%, they need to increase the amount of money that the poor and the vulnerable get by 22%. This way, then it's balanced. Now, they have oil, they have gold. This, in my opinion, is just them trying to, we saw all the memorandums of understanding. Remember that when Al-Kadhimi got in office, he went to America, he went over to Europe, he's talking to his fellow Arab nations. They all signed all kinds of memorandums of understanding to do business with one another. So countries are going to want to open up businesses here in Iraq again to start manufacturing stuff, and they can manufacture it cheaper in Iraq because of devalued currency. Okay, so I've been telling people all day long, look, I don't feel discouraged one way or the other about this. Okay, because the more Iraq gets off of just really depending so much on oil, and these other companies start coming in and people start going back to work, they're getting paid salaries. They no longer need to get money from the government, whether it's welfare or unemployment, whatever it is. They start going back to work. They're earning a salary. They start paying taxes. Then they start going out and buying goods. You know what I mean? So it's just, my thing is, I don't know how they're going to counter inflation, because if you devalue the currency, that means you're going to need more dollars. So let's get into this article really quick. It said the advisor, the Prime Minister for Financial Affairs, revealed today, Saturday, the effects of change in the exchange rate of the dollar against the dinar and how all groups are affected, especially those with limited income. It said the official news agency quoted this person as saying the reduction of the exchange rate in a rainier economy such as Iraq is directly related to financing the state's general budget and represents, in essence, an inflationary financing method, that is buying a cheap dinar issued by the central bank with the government oil revenues of dollars or the high value foreign currency to fill part of the deficit in the general budget, equivalent to the reduction percentage. See, again, I told you they get paid in petrodollars. So when they convert that money that they make from the oil into dinars, more of their debt can get paid off. I know that sounds crazy, but think about it. Because you take the US dollars, which is the more valuable currency, and when you exchange it for the Iraqi dinars, the national overall deficit, you need less money, hypothetically. That's because you get more dinars from the petrodollar when you exchange them. Well, of course, that's one way to help with the national deficit, help with the budgets is what they're doing. The reduction in exchange rate, okay, so it's inflationary buyer cheap dinar issued by the central bank with the government oil revenue dollars. Okay, I just talked about this. So you see what they're doing? So we know this, whenever they sell the oil, they get the petrodollar. The US dollar is worth more money than the dinar. When they change the rate to 1,450 dinars for every $1 US, this is good because that means now they get more dinar from the US dollar. This goes good if you're trying to pay off a national deficit. Okay, but very interesting because they really don't have anything else outside of oil to export. This is good if you are a company in another country and you want to open a business there. That means the cost of labor is cheaper. Casey has pointed out that the reduction carries positive effects for holders of real wealth of foreign assets, such as the rich in dollars, or owners of foreign assets such as gold, cars, and others. And the added value here is increasing emergency wealth due to the change in government policies in its favor. And although the local markets itself is not affected in a way, you see, this is what I'm talking about. Now, the local markets, like I said, most people, when a rate change happens, unless it's really seriously drastic, you won't notice it until all of a sudden the cost of goods starts to go up. Anyways, they're saying here is not really affected, not yet, not till it starts getting noticeable. That says by discounting because it can transfer the price or value burden of the consumer or the final buyer at once as a transitional inflationary tax, with the exception of temporary problems related to the contracts between dealers, term sales, debt, and mutual obligations. Okay, so if you're in contract right now, you're screwed, but they can redo their contracts and make adjustments according to the change in the exchange rate, is what you're talking about there. It says this does not mean that there has been no contraction in the demand for goods and services in the market, especially goods with high flexibility in demand for them, including luxury and leisure goods, flooding the market that suppress the local products due to the lack of imports from it. So again, in other words, because there's not been a lot of imports because their purchasing power is very weak, then it's not really affecting their local markets at the moment. It remains the most effective. What is that? It says, it remains the most effective person from the lowering of the exchange rate in all cases are those with limited income and the poor and vulnerable groups in society, as the purchasing power of their incomes in a local currency will decrease by a decrease in the external value of money due to the increase in prices. So again, it's going to cost you more to import things. Therefore, the companies don't, they're not affected by the increase because they pass the burden on to the consumers. So at the moment, they're not being affected. But as it starts costing them more of their dinars to import stuff that's needed, the local markets will start to be affected. It says medicines are what requires a government's program to compensate those affected by the poor, vulnerable, and low-income classes. So, again, what do you say? On Saturday, about the reasons that led to the increase in exchange rate, indicated that the step raising its price will not affect those with limited income. I'm curious to see how you're going to make this happen. You're going to have to increase the amount of money that they get. So the finance minister, LBRY, in a televised interview with a number of media outlets, in the event the exchange rate is not changed, the central bank's reserves will be implemented after 6 months. Iraq suffers from a high exchange rate for the dollar that weakens the ability of Iraq's goods to compete. Again, you don't really have goods to compete with people, not yet. I mean, look, when I talk about this, I'm generally speaking. I'm not trying to say that they don't have anything. But of course, what happens is if you devalue your currency, which China is usually busted for manipulating the currency, lowering it, that means then people from other countries can buy goods from that country for cheaper. Or you can have things made there cheaper because the currency's value is so low. You could get more of that currency with your dollar, just like I was talking about. So again, they're trying to say, hey, there's a positive side to this, but what do you have at the moment to offer to people? So, but this is good when you're exporting and you have a lot of things to export. You get a lot of business that way. But again, it's because the cost of labor is cheaper because you get more bang for your buck from a foreign currency. But yeah, so it says this is what I think the real reason is for right here. He pointed out that reducing the exchange rate encourages the private sector to produce and export, noting that adjusting the exchange rate is part of the reforms to the Iraqi economy within 2021 budget. So in other words, if let's say I'm importing TVs. I'm importing TVs from another country because it cost us $400 to make the same TV. I can import it for $300 from another country. So in other words, it's cheaper for me to not make it in my country. It's cheaper for me to buy it made from another country and resell it in my country. I'm just simplifying things, people. So what they're saying is, well, fine. What we'll do is this. We'll decrease the value of our currency. that means your purchasing power to import that same TV has now gone up. So even though it now costs, $400 to produce that TV and you were getting it for $350 because of devalued currency, if you're going to import that TV still, now it's going to cost you $425 to import that TV. So now what happens is you go, well, now it's cheaper for me to buy it in country, which is good for Iraq, because the more they, keep from importing things and keep things in-house, then it's good for the economy. It strengthens the dollars. But again, these people are starting over from scratch. And I mean, like literally, their country is trying to rebuild. So it would have seemed to me that they would have definitely changed the rate at a much lowering the rate so that it goes in the opposite direction of what they did. So to increase their purchasing power so they can get the materials necessary to start rebuilding their country. So instead, they're going in the opposite direction. They're lowering this and then trying to entice countries to come in and start doing business in country. Instead of importing goods, they want to have them made there. Okay, so it says reducing the exchange rate, the private sector to produce and exports, noting that adjusting the exchange rate is part of the reforms to our Iraqi economy for the 2021 budget. He's pointed out that the Iraqi faced a great faced a great challenge and inability to compete, noting that changing the exchange rate helped the rise of Egyptians' exports, for example. It is not correct that people with limited income are more affected by the change of the exchange rate, he said, noting that the poor groups will not be affected by the change in exchange rate because the value of housing, rent, and food and baskets will not change unless the buyer imports things. Okay, yeah, I was about to make this correction, and this person did it. Okay, so again, this is actually, I know you don't like to hear this, but this is good for the Iraqi people. The less they import and the more they stay in country, the stronger the economy becomes, the more jobs are available, the more the country benefits from this. Okay? So I could see what he's saying there. I was about to say, wait a minute. So, like I said, the poor won't feel the effect of the change in the exchange rate until they start seeing it in products that they buy. I wanted to make this correction, but this person kind of jumped and beat me to it in this paragraph. Okay, another if the products are made, produced, or generated there in country, then they won't notice any change at all. And I was going to say they would only change that they would notice is anything that's being imported. Okay, so again, this is good for Iraq in the sense that, it's forcing people to do less importing. It's going to encourage companies from other countries to come in because it's cheaper to make the product there and then send it back to yourself in your own country. It will affect the poor. It just depends on what kind of goods they need to import. The less they import, then again, it's not going to really affect the poor. But right here it says, regarding the effects of the change, Alawi pointed out the positive effect on changing the exchange rate would be through encouraging the Iraq industry and providing jobs opportunities, adding that Iraq is a consumer country and we want to change the reality by changing the exchange rate first. Okay, so this is just Iraq's way of doing less importing, opening up more business in country, and encouraging international businesses to come into Iraq and start opening up businesses there is what it is, manufacturing most likely. All right. So again, to me, this is not a long-term thing. It really isn't. But Iraq really is starting from scratch. Again, don't get discouraged. I mean, I just throw mine in the drawer. I'll continue to keep an eye on this, but I don't anticipate this rate change being long-term. Iraq is going to be the gateway into the Middle East. There's no doubt about it. Once they start rebuilding, it's really going to take off, and then you're going to see huge growth in their GDP. Okay, so that means the stronger the economy becomes, the stronger their currency becomes. Now, again, the one thing that's not being taken into consideration of all this, I want you guys to think about this. The one thing that's not being taken in here, okay, is the value of the US dollar. Right now, it looks strong, but it's being artificially pumped up. We know this. Eventually, that dollar is going to crash. Once the US dollar starts to lose its value, you will get less Iraqi dinar, which would be a good thing for dinar holders. Okay, so those types of things aren't being mentioned in here. Right now, what they're doing is what's best for the country. Yeah, it sucks. Okay, but to me, it's not that big of a blow. I'm not discouraged in any way, shape, or form. We just need Iraq to start rocking and rolling, start rebuilding, less importing, businesses opening up over there, people back to work and strengthening their economies. I don't think it's going to take very long at all for that to start happening. I'm pretty impressed with Al-Qademi. This man went out and got all kinds of memorandums of understanding. There's a lot of countries wanting to do business in Iraq. And it looks like this is this is a pretty big step in that direction. I know you guys don't want to hear this. This is why we don't talk about dates and rates. We did know that the rate change was going to be spoken about in the reform papers. We just didn't know what direction it was going into. And again, that doesn't change anything. Now somebody asked me this. They said, Pimpy, does this mean we buy on the dip? I'm trying not to laugh, but yeah. Look, you want to hear something crazy. The rate used to be much worse than this. At one time, I think, I don't remember what it was, but I think you used to get over 2,000 Iraqi dinars for $1 US. And this person a long time ago bought a crap load of dinars. So when the rate change got up to $1,190, they were complaining. They were expecting that big $3 rate. They don't realize that they just made a huge profit off their money, because moving it from over 2,000 down to only 1,190, you made a lot of money. You just don't realize it. I mean, it's not going to make you filthy rich, but you made a lot of money off your dinar. Okay, so when a person asked me buying a dip, I couldn't help but laugh. But yeah, this is a form of the dip. But here's the thing, be careful. We see them talking about this, all right? But we're not seeing the changes happen. Not yet. Not yet. So my guess is that they're just going to be waiting until the 2021 budget comes out or the beginning of the new year in order for the rate change to take effect. But if that's the case, then I don't know if we should be falling for that. You know what I mean? In other words, again, we don't care about what they say. We care about what they do. This might be their way of shaking speculators off of dinar. They're trying to get you to stop buying dinar. Do you know what I mean? Until the rate change has actually taken effect, that's nice that they're making this announcement. Good. I mean, I get it. I understand why. But even so, they announced it. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen. Again, you guys, what we want to do is, we don't mind hearing what they have to say, but we want to watch what they do, okay? So, they're saying the rate change is going to happen. It has not happened. The new budget hasn't been completed yet, as far as I know. I think somebody told me today, because I was on the road again today, said that the Erbil and Baghdad did come into an agreement. If that's the case, then they're going to go ahead and finalize all the things that need to be done on the 2021 budget and send it to parliamentary, and the parliamentary is going to go ahead and vote on it. Again, they can say what they want, all they want, but let's see what they do, okay, guys? So again, when you hear good news, don't get overly excited. When you hear bad news, don't get overly down about it, okay? Let's see what they do. And then we can have an emotional one way or another about it. All right, you guys? All right, that's it for now. Let me know what you guys think. We haven't seen official rate change. Are they really going to change the rate? I don't want to give people false hope one way or another. I'm just saying to you, they're saying this, but we have not, we've not seen no official rate change. Not yet. All right, you guys. So we'll see what happens. But somebody said, "Do you buy in a dip, Pimpy?" Yeah, that's cost average. I mean, you know what I mean. If you think about how much you pay for your dinar, if you could pick up more for less, well, then you do so. That means a cost average. I mean, overall cost for all your dinars is lower than it is where it is now. Okay. Let me know what you think. Hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so. Because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. And I'll catch you later.